I didn't think a 10-day backpacking trip through Europe could make me question an entire relationship. But 3 nights ago, in Prague, I ended up sitting in a hostel lobby at 2 a.m., my backpack as a pillow, my phone on 7%, and my boyfriend, Robbie, pacing in front of me like I'd personally ruined his life. "Why didn't you remind me?" he hissed, loud enough that the night receptionist glanced up. I blinked at him, too tired to even be angry yet. "Remind you to bring your keycard?" "Robbie, you're holding your jacket, you're holding your phone. How is your keycard my job?" He threw his hands up, like I'd just failed some sacred girlfriend test. "Because couples help each other. You always have everything handled. You could have just..." "Just what?" I cut in, my voice shaking because I could feel something inside me snapping. "Just manage your life for you, like I've been doing this entire trip." He scoffed. "I never asked you to do that. You're the one who likes planning. You're controlling." That word, controlling, landed in my chest like a stone. Because if you'd seen this trip, you'd know the truth. I wasn't controlling. I was compensating. Constantly. Quietly. Like a person walking behind someone with a dustpan, sweeping up mess after mess before it became a disaster. And still, somehow, when the disasters happened, missed timing, lost things, dead phone, forgotten wallet, forgotten key, he looked at me like I was the problem for not fixing them fast enough. In that lobby, with the building lights too bright and the floor too cold, Robbie kept complaining about how uncomfortable he was, as if he hadn't brought us there. I watched him, and I swear, for the first time, I wasn't seeing my boyfriend. I was seeing a grown man who expected a woman to carry his brain for him and punish her when she refused. I remember staring at the locked elevator door and thinking, if this is what traveling with him feels like, what does the rest of my life look like? I'm Hannah, 27, and I've always been the kind of woman who keeps her life stitched together with lists. Not because I'm controlling, not because I need everything perfect, but because I grew up in a house where the adults were always almost late, almost broke, almost stable. My mom did her best, my dad tried, but bills were always a little behind and plans were always a little messy. As a kid, I learned that if you wanted something to go right, you didn't just hope, you prepared. So now, as an adult, I plan, I book, I double check. I keep screenshots of confirmation emails. I carry a portable charger. I leave early. And in a lot of ways, that's been a strength. It's helped me in my job, too. I work in a project coordination role for a mid-sized company, which basically means I'm paid to notice details before they explode into problems. People call me reliable. They say, if Hannah's on it, we're fine. Then I met Robbie. Robbie is 28. Charming. Funny. The kind of guy who can talk to strangers like they've been friends for years. The kind of guy who makes waiters laugh and convinces you to split dessert even when you're full. On our first date, he made me feel light, like I didn't have to be the responsible one for once. He told me he worked a solid job, lived on his own, had his life mostly together. And honestly, for a while I believed him. Because in the early stages of dating, irresponsibility can look like spontaneity. If he was late, he'd show up grinning, breathless, saying, "I got caught up, sorry babe," and he'd kiss my forehead like it was cute. If he forgot something, he'd laugh and say, "That's why I have you, you're the organized one." If plans were unclear, I'd fill in the blanks without even thinking. I told myself it was balance. He was the fun one, I was the steady one. But over time, balance started to feel like weight. Like I was holding the relationship in place with invisible work he didn't even notice. Still, there were good moments that kept me soft toward him. Movie nights where he'd rub my feet without being asked. Random afternoons where he'd show up with iced coffee because he saw it and thought of me. He'd introduce me proudly as his girlfriend, like he genuinely adored me. And he did, I think, in his way. But love doesn't cancel out patterns. It just makes you excuse them longer. How the Europe trip became our big test. 6 months ago, Robbie brought up the idea of a Europe backpacking trip. He framed it like something romantic and adventurous. Amsterdam canals, Berlin nightlife, Prague architecture, Vienna cafes. "We should do something epic," he said, eyes bright. "A real trip, us, together." I won't lie, something in me melted. I'd been craving a reset. I'd been working hard, saving money, postponing joy like it was a luxury. And traveling has always been my dream. Not the resort kind, but the walking kind. The exploring kind, the kind where you taste cities slowly. So I said yes. We planned it for 10 days, Amsterdam to Berlin to Prague to Vienna. Robbie told me up front, almost proudly, "You're better at planning. I'm not good with details." And that should have been my first warning, because "I'm not good with details" is an odd thing for an adult to say about their own life. But I thought, okay, I'll do the logistics. He'll bring the energy. It'll be fine. So I made the itinerary. I booked hostels with good reviews. I mapped out routes between train stations and airports. I picked a few key activities in each city, leaving plenty of free time so we didn't feel rushed. I even built in buffers, extra minutes, extra backup plans, because I know how travel can go. Robbie contributed enthusiasm. He reacted to my plans with, "That sounds amazing, and you're so good at this, and I'm so excited." And because he sounded grateful, I convinced myself it was teamwork. I also had another reason for taking the lead. I'd seen glimpses of how Robbie handled responsibility before, and I didn't want our trip to collapse because of it. There was the time he missed his own cousin's birthday dinner because his phone didn't charge. The time he forgot to pay a bill and shrugged like it was funny. The time he showed up to a concert without his ticket and expected me to fix it. Each time he had a story, a technical glitch, a reason. And each time I handled it. Not because I wanted to mother him, because I wanted peace. So when Europe came, I treated it like a test of something I'd been avoiding admitting to myself. If I stop carrying the mental load, will Robbie pick it up? I genuinely believed being in the middle of a trip would force him to step up. That the stakes would make him focus. That once we were out there, he'd become the version of himself he always promised he was. And the saddest part is, on the night before we left, when I texted him, "Reminder, meet at the station 5:30 a.m., I sent screenshots of the train schedule," he replied instantly. "Got it, 5:20, promise." I stared at that message and felt this warm relief. Like maybe I was wrong about him. Like maybe I'd been too hard on him. Like maybe this trip would be the start of something better. I went to sleep early, my bag packed neatly by the door, my passport in a zipped pocket, my itinerary printed and saved offline on my phone. I remember lying in the dark, smiling to myself. And I had no idea that the next morning, I'd be standing alone on a platform at 5:30 a.m. with 2 heavy backpacks, watching the minutes bleed away. And realizing, one slow second at a time, that I had carried him into this trip the same way I'd been carrying him in our relationship. The train platform was cold in that quiet, early morning way. Too quiet for how fast my heart was beating. 5:30 a.m. I stood there with both backpacks, one digging into my shoulder, the other resting between my feet, and kept checking my phone like it might suddenly explain itself. No missed calls, no texts, no Robbie. I told myself not to spiral. Maybe he's running a minute late. Maybe the train's delayed. Maybe... I called him. Straight to voicemail. Again. Still nothing. At 5:38, the train pulled in. The doors slid open with a soft mechanical sigh, like they were mocking me. People stepped on, half asleep, coffees in hand, already committed to their day. I stayed where I was. At 5:42, I sent a text I tried very hard to keep neutral. "Where are you?" By 5:45, I had to make a decision. Get on the next train and risk missing our flight, or get on this one alone and deal with the fallout later. I waited. I don't know why I waited. Maybe hope, maybe habit, maybe because I was already tired and the trip hadn't even started yet. At 5:55, Robbie came running down the stairs, breathless, hair messy, panic written all over his face. Babe, I'm so sorry," he panted. "My phone died overnight. My alarm didn't go off." I just stared at him. Not because I was angry yet, but because something in me was already resigning itself. "Grab your bag," I said. "We need to move, now." We caught the next train with barely enough time. I checked us in on my phone while he paced the aisle, muttering apologies, promising it wouldn't happen again. At the airport, as we rushed towards security, Robbie suddenly froze. "Wait." My stomach dropped. "What?" I can't find my passport." "Of course." He dropped his backpack on the floor and started dumping everything out. Clothes, chargers, snacks, right there between travelers pulling rolling suitcases around us. People stared. Someone sighed loudly. I knelt down with him and helped search, even though my hands were shaking. "Did you check the guidebook?" I asked. "Yes." "Check again." He snapped, "I did." 2 minutes later, he found it wedged inside the guidebook. He laughed like it was a funny story. I didn't. Amsterdam, where it became normal. Amsterdam should have been magical. Canals, bikes, soft evening light, the kind of place you imagine holding hands and feeling grateful to be alive. Instead, 10 minutes after we left the train station, Robbie's phone died. He shrugged. "Guess you're navigating." I handed him my portable charger. He blinked. "Oh, I thought you were bringing it." "I did. That's why I bought it." He smiled like I'd done him a favor. That became the pattern. In Berlin, when it was Robbie's turn to book an activity, he spent 2 hours scrolling a German website, frowning, asking me what words meant. "Can you just do it?" he finally said. "You're better at this." I booked it. In Prague, he lost his Metro card. Twice. Forgot socks. Left his jacket at a restaurant, which meant a 20-minute walk back while our dinner reservation waited. Each incident on its own was small, but stacked together, they felt heavy. Because every time something went wrong, Robbie didn't say, "That's on me." He said things like, "You're already on it, right? You don't mind handling this? You're so good at fixing things." And when I hesitated, even slightly, his mood shifted. Like my competence was expected, but my boundaries were an inconvenience. I noticed it most in his tone. How quickly appreciation turned into irritation. How easily can you help became, "Why aren't you helping?" The seed fully takes root. By the time we reached Prague, my body felt tense in a way I couldn't shake. My shoulders were always tight. My brain never fully rested. Even lying in bed at night, I was mentally reviewing the next day. Robbie, meanwhile, seemed relaxed, because someone else was carrying the weight. The night of the restaurant reservation, the one that ended in him yelling at me in front of strangers, I felt something shift permanently. Not just anger, clarity. When he found his wallet exactly where I'd suggested looking first and didn't apologize, when he acted like we should just rush to dinner and pretend nothing happened, I realized something that scared me. Robbie didn't see my effort. He only noticed it when it stopped. And when it stopped, he punished me for it. That night, lying in our bunk bed, listening to him scroll his phone like everything was fine, I stared at the ceiling and thought, if I stay with him long enough, this becomes my life. Not just on trips, but forever. And that realization, quiet, heavy, undeniable, was the real beginning of the end. The real breaking point didn't happen during a big, dramatic fight. It happened quietly, late, exhausted, and locked out of a room that was supposed to be ours. It was our last night in Prague. I remember the air was cool, the streets glowing amber from old lamps, tourists thinning out as midnight crept closer. We'd gone out for a simple dinner, nothing fancy, just something warm before packing for our flight the next morning. I was tired but calm, emotionally distant in a way that happens when your body has been running on adrenaline for too long. As we reached the hostel entrance, Robbie suddenly stopped. "Wait." I turned. "What?" He patted his pockets. Once, twice, then faster. "I don't have the key card." I closed my eyes for half a second. Not to be dramatic, not to punish him. Just to breathe. "The front desk closes at midnight," I said slowly. "It's after midnight." He looked at me like this was brand new information. "Well, where's yours?" "In my bag," I said, like it's been all trip. His face changed. That shift again. That flash of irritation before responsibility ever touched him. "Why didn't you remind me to grab it?" Something in my chest cracked. "I didn't remind you because you're an adult," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were trembling. "I didn't remind you because I'm not your manager." He scoffed. "Unbelievable." The door was locked. The desk was dark. No staff, no backup. Robbie started pacing. "This is exactly what I mean," he said. "You always act like it's not your problem when something goes wrong." I stared at him. "Because it's not." "That's not how couples work," he snapped. "Couples support each other." "And I've been supporting you this entire trip," I said. "What you mean is, you want me to manage you." He laughed, actually laughed. "God, you're being dramatic. I never asked you to do all that planning. You chose to." There it was. The sentence that erased months of emotional labor in one breath. I felt heat rush to my face. I chose to because if I didn't, nothing would get done. "That's your opinion," he shot back. "You just like control." Control. After 10 days of carrying schedules, bookings, directions, chargers, documents, and emotional stability for two people, he called me controlling. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then reality kicked in. We dragged our bags into the lobby and sat down on opposite ends of a couch meant for two. The overhead lights were harsh. The floor smelled faintly of cleaner. My legs ached. Robbie spent the next hour complaining. About the couch, about the lighting, about how uncomfortable he was. Not once did he say, "I'm sorry." Not once did he say, "This is my fault." I pulled my jacket tighter around myself and stared at the wall, realizing something chillingly clear. If I stopped fixing things, everything fell apart. And instead of stepping up, he blamed me for the mess. Around 3 a.m., as his voice droned on about how bad the night was, I stopped listening. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Because in that moment, locked out of a room because he forgot a plastic card, I saw the future with painful clarity. Missed deadlines, forgotten responsibilities, me cleaning up, apologizing, adjusting, and him always confused about why I was upset. When morning finally came and the staff let us back into the room, Robbie acted like the night was just another travel hiccup. as if nothing fundamental had broken. But for me, that night was the inciting moment, the point of no return. By the time morning light filtered through the thin, hostile curtains, I felt hollow. Not sad in a dramatic way, not angry in a fiery way, just emptied out. Robbie slept through most of it, curled on his side, breathing evenly, like the night before, had been nothing more than an inconvenience. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, not just Prague, but the pattern stitched through our entire relationship. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. When did I become responsible for another adult's life? At breakfast, Robbie acted normal. Too normal. He joked about how rough the couch had been, complained about his neck, laughed about how travel chaos builds character. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the foam dissolve. Last night wasn't okay, I said finally. He sighed, already irritated. Hannah, can we not start the day like this? That sentence, can we not start the day like this, hit me harder than shouting ever could. Because it translated to, your feelings are inconvenient. I'm serious, I said. You blamed me for something that wasn't my responsibility. He shrugged. I was frustrated. You yelled at me, in front of people, and then acted like nothing happened. He leaned back in his chair. You're holding a grudge. I'm setting a boundary. That made him scoff. You always do this. Turn everything into a big emotional thing. I felt that familiar pull to explain myself better, to soften my tone, to make him understand. And then I stopped, because I realized something terrifyingly simple. I had explained myself so many times already. So instead of arguing, I did something different. I left. That morning, I went on the walking tour alone. I wandered through Prague, listening to history in a stranger's voice, the city unfolding around me. Cobblestones, quiet alleys, the sound of church bells in the distance. And for the first time on the entire trip, my shoulders dropped. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't compensating. I wasn't managing anyone else's emotions or mistakes. I felt peaceful. When I came back that evening, Robbie was upset. You just left, he said. You didn't even try to wake me up properly. I did, I replied. You told me to let you sleep. Well, you know I'm not a morning person. That was when it clicked. He didn't just expect help. He expected anticipation. For me to know his needs before he did. For me to adjust my plans around his habits. For me to absorb the consequences of his choices. And when I didn't, I was selfish, controlling, unsupportive. That night, lying in bed next to him, I finally admitted something to myself I'd been avoiding for months. Robbie didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as infrastructure, something that existed to make his life smoother, quietly, efficiently, and took offense the moment it stopped working. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. The last 48 hours of the trip felt heavier than the entire week before it. Not because anything particularly dramatic happened, but because everything finally made sense. After Prague, we were supposed to head to Vienna together. One last city, one last chance to end the trip on a good note. Instead, that morning, Robbie dropped the bomb casually, like it was no big deal. I think I'm going to extend my trip, he said, scrolling on his phone. Dave's in Munich. I found a cheap flight. I looked up slowly. Extend how? 2 days, he said. I already booked it. Already booked it. No discussion, no check-in, no we. So you're just leaving? I asked. He frowned like I was being unreasonable. It's not leaving. You're going home anyway. I stared at him. We planned this together. Yeah, but this is just easier, he said. You're good on your own. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Not because it was cruel, but because it revealed how he saw me. Self-sufficient, low maintenance, replaceable in the logistics of his life. We flew separately. At the airport, there was no big goodbye, no moment of reflection. He hugged me, said, "Text me when you land," and walked off like we were parting after a normal weekend. On my flight home, I didn't cry. I felt something colder. Distance. Back home, the escalation continued. Once I was back, the fog lifted completely. Robbie texted me like nothing had happened. When can we hang out? We should plan our next trip better, LOL. Travel stress is wild, right? He was already reframing everything, reducing 10 days of imbalance, disrespect, and emotional labor into normal travel stress. I didn't respond right away. 3 days later, we met at a coffee shop. Neutral territory, just like I needed. I told him calmly how I felt. About the mental load, about the constant fixing, about the way he blamed me when things went wrong. To my surprise, he listened. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. My friend Dave said maybe I'd be happier with someone who likes handling details, he said carefully, and you're really good at that. There it was. Not accountability. Reassignment. He wasn't asking how to change. He was suggesting I accept the role permanently. So you think it's fair, I asked slowly, that I manage everything just because I'm capable? He hesitated. I mean, it works, doesn't it? I shook my head. It works for you. He looked genuinely confused. I thought you enjoyed it. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a worldview. Robbie believed that if someone can do something well, they should do it, regardless of fairness, balance, or consent. And when I pushed back, when I asked him to take responsibility, he didn't see that as growth. He saw it as me being difficult. Escalation doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like calm, confident dismissal of your reality. And by the time I left that coffee shop, I knew something irreversible had happened. I no longer trusted him to tell the truth about our relationship, even to himself. The darkest part didn't come with yelling or tears. It came in the silence afterward. After that coffee shop conversation, Robbie went quiet in a way that felt strategic. Not angry, not apologetic, just absent. He sent a few casual texts, random updates about his day, memes like nothing serious had happened. And I realized something chilling. He thought this would pass. That if he waited long enough, I'd slide back into my old role, the organizer, the fixer, the emotional shock absorber. That realization hit me late one night when I was sitting alone on my couch, phone in my hand, rereading our messages from the trip. Not to torture myself, but because I needed to be sure I wasn't imagining things. And the more I read, the worse it felt. Every apology he'd ever given was conditional. Every conflict ended with me smoothing things over. Every, "you're so good at this," had quietly become an expectation. I started questioning myself. Am I too demanding? Is this really how most couples work? Did I create this dynamic by stepping in too often? That self-doubt was the darkest part. Because it didn't just make me sad, it made me smaller. I talked to friends, carefully at first, like I was afraid of being told I was overreacting. But instead I got concerned looks, long pauses, quiet, "that's not okays." One night, my friend Lisa said something that stuck in my chest. "You don't sound like someone who was on vacation," she said. "You sound like someone who was on duty." That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Not because I missed Robbie, but because I finally admitted how lonely I'd been inside that relationship. Being with him meant always being the capable one, the calm one, the reasonable one, the one who didn't make mistakes. And when I stopped playing that role, even briefly, I was punished with blame, dismissal, or rewriting of reality. That's when the fear crept in. If I stayed, this would be my future. Always compensating, always explaining, always doubting myself, and worse, slowly losing trust in my own memory, my own instincts. That night, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and whispered something I'd been avoiding. I don't feel safe being misunderstood like this. Not physically, emotionally. And that was the lowest point. Realizing that the man I loved didn't actually see me and might never want to. The turning point didn't come from Robbie. It came from someone else saying out loud what I had been afraid to name. About 2 weeks later, I ran into his sister, Jenny, at the grocery store. We'd always gotten along. Small talk, shared jokes, nothing complicated. So when she asked, "Hey, how are you doing after Prague?" I smiled automatically and said I was fine. Then she tilted her head, confused. "I'm glad," she said carefully. "Robbie said you had kind of a panic attack over there." My heart stopped. What?" She blinked. "That's what he told us. That you got really anxious, started micromanaging everything, and kind of spiraled." The floor felt unsteady under my feet. I asked her quietly to tell me exactly what Robbie had said. And as she talked, I felt something cold spread through my chest. In his version, I was controlling. I got upset over small mistakes. I refused to help him when he was stressed. I made scenes. He was patient, understanding, calm. It was a complete rewrite. Not just different interpretations, different facts. I corrected her, gently but clearly. I told her about the missed train, the lost passport, the wallet, the key card, the yelling, the blame, the night on the lobby couch. Jenny listened, her expression changing with every sentence. "That's not how he described it," she said finally. That night I couldn't sleep, because this wasn't just about irresponsibility anymore. It was about character. I met Robbie again. Same coffee shop, same neutral table, but this time I wasn't there to explain myself. I told him what Jenny said. He didn't deny it. He just said, "That's how it felt to me." I stared at him. "You told people I had a panic attack." "Well, you were really stressed." "That's not the same thing," I said. "That's not even close." He shrugged. "Maybe we remember things differently, but my feelings were real." And there it was. The moment everything snapped into place. Robbie didn't care about accuracy. He cared about comfort, his own. If rewriting reality made him feel less responsible, less flawed, less wrong, he would do it. Even if it meant throwing me under the bus. Even if it meant damaging my reputation with people I cared about. I felt strangely calm. Because clarity does that. I need you to correct what you told them, I said. Your family, your friends. You need to tell them the truth. He hesitated. That would just make things awkward. So you'd rather leave them believing I'm unstable? He looked away. That was my answer. In that moment, I realized something profound and devastating. Robbie didn't just avoid responsibility for tasks. He avoided responsibility for truth. And I knew, without doubt, that if I stayed, I would spend my life fighting not just his behavior, but his version of reality. That was the turning point. Because once you see that, love is no longer enough. I didn't end things with Robbie that day. Not immediately. I went home and sat with the truth first. Because once you see someone clearly, you owe it to yourself not to rush, but to choose. For a few days, I watched what he did next. And what he did next told me everything. He didn't call his sister. He didn't text his parents. He didn't correct a single lie. Instead, I started getting messages. From his mother, asking if I was feeling better. From his sister, checking in, because stress can really get to people. From a mutual friend, gently suggesting I take things slower. Robbie had done nothing to stop it. He let the story stand because it benefited him. That was the fallout. Not screaming, not public drama, just quiet reputational damage, spreading outward while he stayed clean and calm at the center of it. I confronted him over text. You need to tell them the truth. This isn't okay. His reply came quickly. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I didn't lie. I just shared my experience. You're asking me to make myself look bad to protect your feelings. I read that last line 3 times. To protect your feelings. As if truth was optional. As if my integrity was an inconvenience. As if my name was expendable. That night, I made the decision. I ended the relationship in one clear message. No accusations, no long explanations. I'm ending this because I don't trust you to take responsibility for your actions or to tell the truth about what happens between us. I don't feel safe being misrepresented by someone who claims to love me. His response was immediate and revealing. You're overreacting. Every couple has issues. You're throwing this away instead of working on it. Then came the promises. I'll try harder. I didn't realize it mattered this much. Let's just talk in person. I didn't reply. I blocked his number. When boundaries triggered escalation, 3 days later, Robbie showed up at my apartment building. He buzzed my unit repeatedly. Hannah, just talk to me, he said through the intercom. This is ridiculous. I told him calmly to leave. He didn't, so I called the police. Standing behind my door while officers spoke to him downstairs, I felt something strange. Not fear, but confirmation. This was who he was when he didn't get his way. After that night, his family tried. Texts, calls, concern framed as care. I ignored all of it because I finally understood something critical. Robbie didn't lose me because of a trip. He lost me because accountability felt optional to him. And people like that don't change when confronted. They change when consequences finally stick. The fallout was quiet but decisive. I walked away with my reality intact. And that mattered more than preserving a relationship built on distortion. After I blocked Robbie, the silence felt loud at first. Not because I missed him, but because my nervous system didn't know what to do without constantly anticipating someone else's needs. For weeks, I'd reach for my phone automatically, like I was supposed to remind someone of something. Then I realized there was no one left to manage, and the relief was unsettling. I took time off dating completely, not to recover from heartbreak, but to recover from hyper-responsibility, from the belief that love meant carrying someone else's life on your back. I started noticing how calm my days felt. No scrambling, no fixing, no explaining myself into exhaustion. Just space. The more distance I had, the clearer everything became. Robbie wasn't a bad man in a dramatic sense. He wasn't cruel on purpose. He didn't wake up planning to manipulate me. But he was comfortable letting someone else absorb the consequences of his choices, and deeply uncomfortable being held accountable for them. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Weaponized helplessness doesn't always look like incompetence. Sometimes it looks like charm, like confusion, like, I didn't mean it that way. And the most dangerous version? The one that rewrites reality so convincingly that you start questioning your own memory. What finally set me free wasn't anger. It was trust in myself. Trusting that repeated patterns matter more than apologies. Being capable doesn't mean being obligated. Love without accountability turns into labor. I don't regret the trip anymore. Europe didn't give me postcards and perfect memories, but it gave me something better. Clarity. I learned that the right partner doesn't get angry when you stop fixing their messes. They pick up the broom. And if they don't, walking away isn't failure. It's self-respect. That's where my story ends. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with a quiet promise to myself. I will never again shrink my reality to protect someone else's comfort. If this story resonates with you, take it as a sign. Pay attention to patterns. Listen when your body gets tired before your heart does. And remember, you're allowed to put the load down. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do.